In a typical negotiation, you have one person who can make a decision or move the deal forward. In China, everything is collective, so you really don't know who the most powerful person in the room is. I've been in negotiations with Chinese government officials, and essentially they get together often, they confer, and then they come back with the answer or the response. And so it's not like a private negotiation.
But is there any question here other than Mr. Liu He is the head guy in this negotiation? That's who the president apparently is going to, obviously there'll be others in the room, but that's the point person here.
Well, Vice Premier Hu, who is one of the 4 vice premiers in China, will be meeting with the president, I guess, in a couple of minutes. He's very close to Xi Jinping, but he alone would not have the ability, in my opinion, to make a commitment unless he had already cleared it with Xi Jinping. So my guess is they were hot on the phones last night talking about what would happen in a few minutes.
When we were together a couple of years ago, right after the current president of China took over, you said this person is different. He is a different kind of leader. He is the most powerful leader of China since Mao. Does he have not the power to make a deal, but the power to not make a deal and run out the clock on President Trump?
Yes, he does. There are 2 reasons. First of all, he does not have any political opposition within the country, and he literally could be the head of China for the next, let's say, 20 years. Secondly, and more importantly, Xi is a guy who has a focus on the long-term interests of China. And if you look at the U.S. political system, literally within the next 6 months, the U.S. is going to have to decide one way or the other what it does with China. Xi has enough power, political, economic, and within the bureaucracy to hold out for another year. So that's why he's more powerful than the president, because of his ability to say, okay, I'm not going to make a decision yet.
Dennis, the thorniest issues in these trade talks have been anything concerning intellectual property, and a major sticking point is trying to craft some sort of memorandum of understanding or some sort of agreement, which would also include the element of enforcement. How can you, in your view, craft that into any sort of agreement without making the Chinese feel like they're being policed, which I would imagine would be a deal breaker?
Well, I actually have a suggestion that I was thinking about last night. Now, Lighthizer and München obviously haven't called me. But what I would do is if you have an issue of the forced intellectual property transfer, which is what they're worried about, I would say to the Chinese, look, you say you're not responsible, we think you are. Why don't we transfer for the next 24 months to Singapore, for example, independent arbitration. They have something called the Singapore International Arbitration Center, and let's let someone else other than you or us in neither of our countries do it. If you really wanted to put it to the Chinese, you're going to say, why don't we see what happens over the next 24 months? That's what I would recommend if asked.
Kayla Tausche just reported that the number that is being floated around in additional Chinese purchases of U.S. goods is something on the order of $1.2 trillion over, I believe it's the next decade. I'm not sure that the time period was specified. Does that number smell right to you?
No. First of all, we have to be able to sell them things that they want to buy that are ours. If you look at the money, the things that we sent to the Chinese, about a third of it was aerospace, part of it was electronics, and with the total 40% were telephones. There's only so much of our stuff that the Chinese can buy. So them promising over the next 10 years I'll buy $1 trillion worth of things, I think that's unenforceable. I'd rather have the Chinese say, look, over the next 18 months, we will reduce the trade deficit between China and the United States by 15%. That would be $50 billion. I would personally rather see the Chinese commit to that than have them say, over the next 10 years, I'm going to spend $1 trillion. I think goals in life are better when they're set in a smaller time frame that you can really measure.